We are following breaking news right now. CBS News has confirmed the U.S. used an aircraft in a boat strike back in September that was painted like a civilian plane. Let's bring in CBS News senior national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata. Charlie, this is really interesting. We've been covering a lot of these boat strikes. This is the first time we're getting this level of detail about how they were conducted. What can you tell us about this?
Well, Adriana, first of all, we have to go back to when this boat strike took place. This is the contentious first one, September 2nd, when that happened, when there was a second or third strike on that boat because there were survivors there. So it was already under the microscope. And now we've learned in the past couple of days that a civilian aircraft, or meant to look like a civilian aircraft, had weapons on board, had munitions, and was involved in the strike. Now, what we don't know is the type of aircraft. We don't know where it left from. Crucially, we don't know whether it was involved in that second strike. The Pentagon said they have an array of aircraft, and the reason they chose that one was because they needed something in a hurry. So there are still some unanswered questions about that. However, the act of using or disguising a military aircraft as a civilian aircraft, or any other civilian device for that matter, is called perfidy, and it is against almost all international laws, including American laws, of disguising aircraft in a war situation or a conflict situation. Now, the Pentagon and others in the U.S. government have argued that this is a sort of drug interdiction. It's not necessarily a military activity that's been going on with these drug boats, so it goes into those gray areas. And more than likely, it was part of Special Operations Command, because we spoke to Southcom about this. That's the Southern Command Operations Area Responsibility. They said they didn't even know about it. So this has clearly been flying under the radar anyway, in a manner of speaking. But now we have confirmation that, yes, that was a military aircraft meant to look like a civilian aircraft that took part in those boat strikes.
And by civilian aircraft, Charlie, it could be anything from someone's tiny private plane to, could it be possibly a plane that was disguised to be a commercial plane?
I mean, it can't be an F-14 or an F-18, right, Charlie?
Exactly, right. So it could be, I was down in St. Croix. I also went to Puerto Rico. There were some aircraft in St. Croix especially that were U.S. military aircraft. They were gray and they had a flag on them. It could be anything up to like a 737 or down to a Cessna. And Cessnas are, not necessarily, I'm not suggesting this is the case in this particular case, but Cessnas have been used in a military capacity. As a matter of fact, the Iraqi Air Force, as it were using Cessnas to drop munitions. So you can up-armor something as small as a Cessna or as large as a jet, but it wouldn't be like an F-18 made to look like a civilian aircraft, no.
All right, Charlie, let's switch gears and talk about the Middle East. As you know, the president has threatened a very strong action if Iranian authorities begin to hang anti-government protesters this week. I'm going to play a bit of what he told CBS Evening News anchor Tony Dokoupil about this in an exclusive interview.
This strong action you're talking about, what's the end game?
The end game is to win. I like winning.
How do you define that in Iran?
Well, let's define it in Venezuela. Let's define it with al-Baghdadi. He was wiped out. Let's define it with Soleimani, and let's define it in Iran, where he wiped out their Iran nuclear threat in a period of about 15 minutes once the B-2s got there. We don't want to see what's happening in Iran happen. And, if they want to have protests, that's one thing. When they start killing thousands of people, and now you're telling me about hanging, we'll see how that works out for them. It's not going to work out good.
So, Charlie, having covered the region for as many years as you have, I'm reminded of President Obama's, not that long, Charlie.
He packed a lot of reporting into very
there in 1979, I know. But I am curious because we all remember back in 2012 when President Obama suggested that there was a red line in the sand if Bashar al-Assad used chemical weapons on his own people. Bashar al-Assad thumbed his nose at that red line in the sand, did ultimately use those chemical weapons, and the Obama administration did not respond. And that is seen now, in hindsight, as a critical foreign policy failure for the Obama administration. If the president is suggesting to dissidents, to protesters, to get out there and protest, literally putting their lives at risk, he's saying help is on the way. How critical is it for that help to arrive, and what happens if it does not?
first of all, thank you, Vlad, for that reminder. But you know, when we look at a situation like this, you talk to the U.S. military, and I have been on with Central Command, which is that area of responsibility that covers Iran, saying, look, where's the strike? What are the possibilities? What are the capabilities that you're presenting the commander-in-chief? Because ultimately, these decisions, especially with this administration, come straight from the White House. You know, the DOD can advise the president on what the options are, and the options are several. We don't have the United States does not have an aircraft carrier in the region. And when you saw the last time, like Operation Midnight Hammer, when they took out Iran's nuclear facilities, they had a carrier there. Part of that is because they have to be concerned about retaliation. So what they have there is still significant. They've got bases in Jordan. They've got that huge base, Al Udeid, in Qatar, which have fighter aircraft. They've got bombers there. And honestly, they can fly B-2 bombers from the United States, which is what they did on the attacks on Iran's nuclear facility. So there are a multitude of options that are presented to the president. Now, the reason there's, I don't know, sort of reluctance when you talk about red lines is because there are going to be after effects for any of this. So are you going to go after the infrastructure? Are you going after Iran's interior security services who are responsible for the deaths of these protesters? Or is it going to be a pinpoint strike? And again, if you're going to do that, Iran is going to retaliate. And unlike the situation that we saw in the attacks against the nuclear facilities, Iran is now facing an existential threat to its regime. So the regime might be under target too. So they're going to throw everything at this if they come under attack.
Just an encyclopedic knowledge of the military, Charlie Daggett.
I love it.
Thank you so much.
But still very youthful.
So youthful.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.